Isn't it a great day to be a Christian? Open your Bibles to Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5. Earlier this morning, we all received a gift. We received an extra hour. Most days only have 24 hours. Today has 25. There are 25 hours in this day. Now, some of you say, well, it's not a gift. It's the payback of a loan. The government took an hour away from us back in March, and today they gave it back to us. That's true. I wish they'd make up their mind, just leave the clock set one way or another. I like daylight savings time. I like a little extra time in the afternoon, but just pick one. Stick with it. According to the American Medical Association, the spring switch, when we spring forward, it's associated with significant public health and safety risk, including the increased risk of heart problems, mood disorders, and car crashes. So, be that as it may, today we have an extra hour. We're going to talk about how we're going to use it. Now, if you used your extra hour the way I did, you slept through it. And I recommend that. Really not talking about how we use that 1 hour. We're talking this morning about how do you use the rest of your time. So let's look at Ephesians chapter 5 and start reading in verse 6. Paul writes this, "Let no man deceive you with vain words, for because of these things cometh the wrath of God upon the children of disobedience. Be not ye therefore partakers with them, for ye were sometimes darkness, but now are ye light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, providing what is acceptable unto the Lord. Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. For it's a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret, but all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light. For whatsoever doth make manifest is light. Wherefore he saith, Awake thou that sleepest, arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. See then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, for the days are evil. Wherefore be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is." Paul told the church in Ephesus that they needed to be redeeming the time. The term that's translated as redeeming the time in the King James and the New American Standard says making the most of every opportunity. The easy to read version says use your time in the best way you can. So what does it mean to redeem the time? Well, the Oxford English Dictionary says redeem is to gain or regain possession of something in exchange for payment. In other words, Paul's saying, make sure you get something worthwhile for the time you spend on whatever that something is. Well, this morning you've seen fit to come spend part of your time listening to me, so I'm going to try to give you something worth your time. We're going to talk about 4 great truths about time. First great truth about time is precious. You may have heard the axiom that's used in business sometimes, time is money. Well, that's true, but time is more important than that. Time is life. Ben Franklin said, "Do you love life? Then do not waste time, for that is the stuff life is made of." When we waste time, we're wasting our life. Look at the 90th Psalm. Psalm 90, verse 10 says this, "The days of our years are 80 years and 10, and if by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet is their strength labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away." Psalmist says we don't have all that much time. 80 and 10, that's 70 years. If you're healthy, maybe 80 years. But we know that's not a promise. We've lost some folks recently that didn't make it to 70 or 80 years. Some of you here have already made it past those numbers. According to statistics, the average American will live to be 77.28 years old. Okay? Women make it a little longer than that. Their average age is about 79. Men will last a little less. They average 73 years. Let's just go with the numbers in the Psalms and say that we get 70 years. I did some math. That's 613,620 hours. Okay, that's the amount of hours that the Psalms say that we have. We've already used up some of those. In fact, I did some more math. When this sermon began, I've got 22,512 hours left of my 70 years. 22,000, not a whole lot of hours when you think about it. Question is, what am I willing to trade for one of those hours? What am I willing to give up for my time? What would you do if you knew for a fact that you had $22,512 in the bank, but when that was gone, that was it? You'd never get another dollar. You had to use that 22,000 well. Well, I probably would try to make sure that I was prepared. I'd probably make sure my house was as good a shape as it could be. I'd probably want to get some clothes I knew would last a long time. I'd probably invest in a garden spot, maybe get some farm animals so I'd have food to eat. I'd probably want to get some renewable energy resources so that I wouldn't have to pay an electric bill because I'm not going to have any money. The idea is I'd plan for the future. So how are you spending your precious time? Because when it's gone, it's gone. Are you using it to plan for the future? Paul said we need to redeem the time. We need to make sure we're getting a good value for the way we spend our time, because like our money, once it's gone, it's gone. So the first truth about time is precious. The second truth about time is that time only goes one way. If you had a time machine, where would you pick to go? If you could go anywhere in time, in the past or in the future, what would you choose? Well, you can dream about time travel, but according to physicists, that's not possible. You can't change your time. Now, they say that the theory of relativity says that the closer you are to a heavy body or large gravitational pull, the slower time travels. So theoretically, it could be possible to go be at the edge of a black hole, and time would go slower there. So if you went to the edge of a black hole and you stayed there for several hours, then when you came back to Earth, thousands of years might have passed. So you could travel to the future. I said theoretically because if you went to the edge of a black hole, the gravity would crush you like a bug. So you couldn't really do that. But even if you could only go forward. We're traveling forward in time at the rate of 1 second per second. Every second we live, that's 1 second less than we have. But you can't go back. I love the Back to the Future movies and Doc Brown's Time Machine, but it's just a dream. The fact is, there is no reverse gear on a clock. We can't go backwards. We can't ever get any lost hours back. We can get forgiveness, but we can't change the things that we do, that we've done in the past. We can change the future. That's why Paul told the Ephesians in verse 15 of our text, see that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. Walk circumspectly. Watch your step. We don't want to be stepping on landmines. We don't want to be going off the cliff. We need to be careful what we do, because what we do today makes a difference in our future. Mark Twain said, good decisions come from experience. Experience comes from making bad decisions. Okay, but we're supposed to use the experience. We're supposed to use the lessons from our past to make wise choices today so we don't repeat the same mistakes in the future. Paul said, walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. Insanity has been defined as doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Paul said, don't be a fool. Change. Be careful how you're doing now. Learn from the mistakes that you've made. Use those now so that you can have a better future. So time is precious. When it's gone, it's gone. Time only goes one way. You can't change things. The third great truth about time is it goes in a hurry. Time flies. You believe there's just 1 month left in this year. 2023 is going to be gone in a little over a month, and I'm just now getting used to writing 23 on checks. I'm still thinking about 2022, and another year is almost gone. And the older I get, the faster time goes. And I found that's true of everybody. I came across this poem. It's an anonymous poem. I don't know who wrote it, but it says, when as a child I laughed and wept, excuse me. When as a child I laughed and wept, time crept. When as a youth I dreamed and talked, time walked. When I became a full-grown man, time ran. Then as with years I older grew, time flew. Soon I shall find as I travel on, time gone. It gets faster and faster all the time. I remember when I was a kid thinking Christmas would never get here. And now it seems like it just finished last week, and now the trees are up in the stores again already. My phone keeps sending me messages. You have memories of today. And I see these pictures that pop up from the past, and there's this 5th grade class. I said, oh, I remember them. That was a great class. I enjoyed teaching them. I got these pictures, but that was 3 or 4 years ago. And then I got to looking, those kids graduated from college last year, okay? Time flies. It's going by in a hurry. We need to be the navigator. We need to be controlling which direction it's flying, where it's going, where it's taking us. Stephen Covey said we don't need to be spending our time, we need to be investing it. When you buy something, eventually it's used up or it wears out. But when you make an investment, you try to do something that's going to last in the future. We invest in retirement accounts and things like that because we hope it'll help us be ready for the future. So the question for us this morning is, what investments are we making in exchange for our time? Are we doing anything to help us get ready for the future? Because the 4th great truth about time is how we spend our time reveals our priorities. 2 things that always reveal what's really important to you: how you spend your money and how you spend your time. People spend their time, people spend their money on things that are important. How do you spend your money? Well, maybe you want the fanciest car or the most modern appliances. Some people want the nicest house or the latest fashion. Some people like to eat the most delicious foods or go to the most exotic vacation spots. Maybe you're investing your money in retirement accounts. How much do you spend on God? Now, this is not a sermon on giving, but the same principles that apply to how we use our money apply to how we use our time. How much time do we devote to God? If I ask you this morning, what's the most important thing in your life, you'll probably say family and faith, or maybe faith and family, and that's true, but does the way you spend your time demonstrate that? Are you spending your time on things that are important? We all love our family. We all want to go to heaven. Are we doing things to help that happen? Sadly, it seems for a lot of us, the most important thing is looking good and having a good time, because that's where we're spending all our time. Do we spend as much time on our spiritual health as we do on our physical health? Sometimes we allow things to come between us and our goals. Sometimes we let things come up that keep us from using our time the way we need to. So the rest of our lesson this morning, we're going to look at some things that can keep us from redeeming the time the way that we're supposed to. We'll call these time bandits because they steal some of our precious time. The first time bandit is procrastination. Now, procrastination is a big fancy word for putting things off that you need to be doing right now. I heard about a guy that checked a book out of the library, How to Stop Procrastinating, but he never got around to reading it. Okay, that's how I am about a lot of things. I put things off. There's a lady named Gloria Pitzer that wrote a poem. She said, "Procrastination is my sin. It brings me naught but sorrow. I know that I should stop it. In fact, I will tomorrow." Okay, we keep putting things off. Why do people procrastinate? Why do we put things off? I remember when I was a teacher, kids would have a test that's coming up next week, and they said, "I'll study for that test tomorrow." And they keep putting it off and putting it off. I remember in college, a few late nights I spent typing a term paper that was due the next morning. Well, that paper had been assigned for a month, but I kept putting it off because I didn't want to spend all that time typing. So I delayed it just as long as possible. Sometimes procrastination is rooted in fear. I don't want to face something, so I just avoid it. I delay acting. One of the saddest passages in the New Testament is found in Acts 24. Apostle Paul is in prison. In Acts 24:24, it says, "And after certain days, when Felix came with his wife Drusilla, which was a Jewess, he sent for Paul and heard him concerning the faith of Christ. And as he reasoned of righteousness, temperance, and judgment to come, Felix trembled and answered, 'Go thy way for this time. When I have a convenient season, I will call for thee.'" The invitation song that we're going to sing tonight was based on this passage. Felix trembled. He was afraid. He knew that he was lost. He knew he needed to obey the gospel, but instead of doing what Paul told him he needed to do, he said, come back some other time. He was almost persuaded. Almost persuaded says, almost persuaded now to believe, almost persuaded Christ to receive. Seems now some soul to say, go Spirit, go thy way. Some more convenient day on thee I'll call. But the last verse of that song says, almost persuaded, harvest is past. Almost persuaded, doom comes at last. Almost cannot avail. Almost is but to fail. Sad, sad, that bitter wail. Almost, but lost. Procrastination can keep us from not getting things done that need to be done. I hope a more convenient season came for Felix. I hope that one day Felix heard the gospel message again, had a chance to repent and be saved. Don't know that that ever happened, but we do know that when he had a chance, he procrastinated. He put it off. 2 Corinthians 6:2 says, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. Procrastination may be a sign of dread, but it also could be a sign of laziness. Someone once said, the lazier a man is, the more he plans to do tomorrow. He doesn't want to do it now, so he puts it off. Proverbs says, in Proverbs 6 verse 9, how long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man. Procrastination can steal away our time. But the remedy for procrastination is diligence. I'll turn over a page to Proverbs chapter 10. Proverbs 10:4 says, he becometh poor that dealeth with the slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich. He that garnereth in summer is a wise son. He that sleepeth in harvest is a son that causeth shame. The Bible continually talks about diligence being more important than intelligence for us being successful. The long-term successful people are the ones that keep on keeping on, the ones that work. Zig Ziglar said it's your attitude more than your aptitude that determines your altitude, how you work at things, that you do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do. One-time bandit is procrastination. Second-time bandit is poor planning. We allow our precious time to be stolen because we don't set a schedule, we don't make a plan. You've heard all your life that people that fail to plan to fail. You realize that everything we read about Jesus, all the sermons he preached, everything he taught, everything he did was accomplished in 3 short years. How could he do that? Well, Jesus knew why he came to earth. He knew what the plan was. He knew what he was supposed to do, and he refused to be distracted. He refused to detour from what God sent him to do. When Jesus died on the cross, his final words in John 19:30 were, it is finished. Jesus did what he came to do. When Jesus died, there were still sick people that needed to be healed. There were still hungry people that needed to be fed. That wasn't part of why Jesus came. Now, those were urgent things. Those were things that Jesus did in order to fulfill his task. But that wasn't why Jesus came to earth. Jesus came to do what the Father sent him to do. There's a man named Charles Hummel. He wrote a book called The Tyranny of the Urgent, and he talks about a lot of people don't get the important things in life done because they spend all their time putting out fires. They deal with things that pop up instead of staying on their task. Jesus kept his focus. John 6:38, Jesus said, for I came down from heaven not to do mine own will, but the will of him that sent me. And that's what Jesus did. When he said it is finished, that's what he meant. He'd done what God sent him to earth to do. The remedy for poor planning is to get our priorities straight. Look at Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3 verse 1 says, if ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things above, not on things of the earth. That should be our priority. That should be the important thing. When somebody tells you, I don't have time for that, what they're really saying is, that's not important to me. I've got things I'd rather be doing than what you want me to do. That's not my priority. We run out of time for the same reason we run out of money, because we don't budget. We don't set plans. We don't think about it. Back in the 1800s, there was a man named Charles Schwab. Charles Schwab was the president of Bethlehem Steel. And he was talking to a man named Ivy Lee, and he said, if you can show me a way to get more things done with my time, I'll pay you any fee within reason. And Ivy Lee gave him a piece of paper. He said, here's what you do. Write down all the things that you want to get accomplished that are important for you to do and number them. Number 1 is the most important thing, and then go on down the list. And when you've decided what's most important, then start on number 1 and don't do anything else until you finish it. Doesn't matter what else comes up, you stay on number 1. When you get that accomplished, look at your list, make sure that it's still right, and then you start on number 2. And you go on. When you've done that for a little while, then hand it out to your other people here and let them do the same thing. And then let me know how it works. And then you send me a check for whatever you think this is worth. Well, Schwab did that. And a little while later, he sent Ivy Lee a check for $25,000. And he said, this was the most profitable lesson I've ever learned. Well, I think Mr. Schwab probably underpaid for that lesson, because 5 years later, Bethlehem Steel was the largest independent steel producer in the world. That concept helped Schwab make over $100 million, which was in the 1800s. Today, that would be over $3 billion, all because he focused on what was important. Every day he'd get up and say, what's the most important thing I need to be doing today? Do we do that? Do we have a plan? Are we spending our time based on what's important in our lives? Finally, the third time bandit is perspective. I think we spend too much time worrying about yesterday or worrying about tomorrow. We don't focus on today. We don't have our perspective. I've heard of people being caught up in paralysis by analysis. They keep overthinking things and they don't get anything done. We can't live burdened with the regret of the past. I messed up yesterday. I did some things I shouldn't have done. I can't focus on that today. I need to be focusing on what I can do today so I don't have that same problem again tomorrow. Go to Philippians chapter 3. Philippians chapter 3, beginning in verse 13. Paul said, brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, reaching forth into those things which are before, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. When was Paul doing his pressing? Today, because he knew where he wanted to be tomorrow. He couldn't worry about what he'd done in the past. Paul had done some things he was ashamed of. Paul had done some things he didn't want to think about. Paul said, I can't worry about that. I got to forget that and do today what's going to equip me for tomorrow. Will Rogers said, don't let yesterday use up too much of today. I think a lot of times we do that. James said the same thing can happen if we look too much about the future. Go to James chapter 4. James chapter 4, verse 13. James says, go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we'll go to such a city, continue there a year, buy and sell and get gain. Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. We don't know that we're going to have tomorrow. We do know God has given us today. We need to use it. Jesus said, Matthew 6:34, take then no thought for tomorrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. In other words, don't be worried about tomorrow. You've got enough trouble today. Deal with that. Make sure we're doing what's important tomorrow. So how are we using today? Let's go back to our original text in Ephesians chapter 5. This time begin in verse 14. Wherefore he saith, awake thou that sleepest, arise from the dead, Christ shall give thee light. See then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, for the days are evil. Wherefore be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. The Lord's will is you need to be a Christian. It's the only life worth living, the only death one would dare to die. If you've never obeyed the gospel, if you've never had your sins washed away in the waters of baptism, there's no better way that you could invest your time today than by obeying God's will. Perhaps you're already a Christian, you realize that you've been wasting your time. You've been spinning your wheels. You haven't been doing the things that you know you need to be doing. Maybe you just need to make a decision on your own right now to change. Maybe there's something that you need the prayers of the church for. If you're subject in any way to the Lord's invitation, won't you come forward right now as we stand together as we sing.